The Veterans Tribute on Eagle Community Television, brought to you by American Legion, Masters Cleaners, Emprise Bank, Vanderbilt's, Steel Fabrications, Ellis County Historical Society, Cross Manufacturing, Cedarview Assisted Living, Heartland Building, Poulos Lock and Key, Downing Nelson Oil, James Motor Company, and Eagle Communications.
Hello and welcome again to Community Connection, our special Memorial Day event from the Hayes American Legion at 13th and Canterbury in Hayes. Thanks for watching, and thanks to our producer, Jeff Durrell. We're at the Merci Boxcar, actually inside the boxcar, for our special event with the Grand Director of the Kansas Merci Boxcar, Ed Holzmeister of Hayes, and Legion member, of course, as well. Tell me about the Legion, Ed.
Well, I've been with the American Legion ever since I got out of the Navy. That was back in '56, January '56, and really didn't get active until our children were a little above board where we could leave every once in a while, and Mother decided she ought to join the auxiliary. So you go ahead and I'll come later. No, you come with me. Yeah. So anyway, we joined the Legion then, and we also got solicited for the VFW at the same time. It seemed like it was about 2 weeks, and I was belonged to every organization in town, but which was all right, you know. And I'm a life member of the Legion and a life member of the VF, and I like both of them. We need both of them.
Legion goes back to 1919, doesn't it?
1919. The Legion was formed in France in 1919, and the 40 and 8 that we're talking about this morning was formed in 1920 in France. And it was formed actually to help the American Legion with members that are servicemen coming back and they're wounded or something, or take care of their wives or their kids or something like that, you know.
Kind of a support group then.
Just a support group. I always call them an auxiliary of the Legion, which a lot of times you need extra help all the time, you know. And volunteer is very important, and that's harder to get. But
now, post 173, which is our Hayes American Legion, when was that formed then?
Really, I can't tell you when that was formed, but it was down at Professors, at the Professors.
That was the original location then?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's when I first got inducted. And but I really wasn't involved with it until they moved out here, and we had a little more time to spend away from home.
Did they have to build the building here, or was it already here? Okay.
Walter Klaus happened to build the Legion out here from Hayes here, and done a fantastic job. And we had Kansas American Legion people come out here and take pictures of the post. That was unique at that time, you know, and they was kind of proud of it, you know. Everybody was proud of it, you know.
Well, then look at what an important part of the community it's been for not only social activities, but veterans getting together, a lot of support, if you will, you know, all from the VF and the American Legion.
Just like when Darlene and I were active in the Legion, we went through the district chairs, and we found that every community has a Legion or the VF, and that was the hub of the community.
Yeah.
They had their weddings and funerals, and you name it was in that building, you know. And so it was really important to have those World War I and II veterans supporting that big thing, you know.
Now let's get to the 40 and 8, the Merci Boxcar, if you will. Give us the background, the history. You are not only Grand Director of the boxcar event for the state of Kansas, but you're also the primary tour guide. We'll talk a little more about that later on, but give us the history of the boxcar.
Well, initially the boxcar was made in around 1885, and basically it was used for, like most railroads, for moving stuff back and forth. Well, here comes World War I, and there was no trucks or anything like that for transportation, so they had to use those boxcars. So when the American troop ships come up to port, well, they had these little boxcars there, and they would take 40 men or in a boxcar, or 8 mules, and then maybe the other boxcar would have their guns and ammunition, all that good stuff, and they would go as far up to the front line as possible, and then they'd let everybody out, and then they walked the rest of the way. And
so that's where the name came from. They had, the boxcar would either have 40 men with full combat gear in it, or they would haul 8 mules.
8 mules.
And then the other cars might have guns, ammunition, supplies, those kind of things.
That kind of stuff, you know. And it was really important that you had transportation back and forth, you know. It just, a lot of these towns were too far apart, you know, to where you have to walk. But
well, in that World War I, there weren't many motorized vehicles, so the reason for the mules then for transportation.
Right, and we always say horses, but they were mules, because a mule is twice as strong as a horse, and they had to pull this equipment, you know, around the hills and stuff like that. But I would imagine it was quite an experience for these servicemen to go through that, you know.
There are some pictures now here in the Merci boxcar itself of the actual troops, the transporting and such as that. And in addition to that, the country of France then donated boxcars to the United States, right?
Right.
And that's how we came to have one.
Well, I'll go back to the beginning on that.
All right.
Drew Pearson up here, he was a news commentator during World War II.
Yeah, columnist and such.
Yeah. He was the one that started it all. After World War II, France and Italy was down and out. So he decided we should be doing something over here for these people. There was nothing for Germany, but anyway, he decided we should do something, but he said, if I go through the government, it may take it forever for them to get something done, and maybe it would never get done. So he went with the idea of people to people, a friendship train. And they started out in California, and they went through the whole United States, and by the time they got to the East Coast, they had 6 or 7 train loads of merchandise. Every state had their own little gig, you know, what they get, like Kansas probably gave a lot of wheat and flour and stuff like that, something that would be non-perishable as such. And we had a little flick one time of when they started out in California. They had this whole train, and on every car they had sun-kissed raisins, sun-kissed raisins, sun-kissed raisins, and that was because the raisins were dry and they would last.
They could transport them.
Them. So everybody came along with medicine, clothing, food, you name it, what they could use, you know. And that was a lifesaver for them over there.
So actually it was U.S. aid from the people of the United States.
People to people.
Going to France and Italy, to the people.
To the people over to France. Then over there, there's a gentleman that used to work for the railroad. And well, he had to go through the service. Well, I always said, good thing he wasn't killed, because what he done afterwards, you know. Anyway, he saw what we did over here, so he decided he would go people to people over there and fill one boxcar for the United States. Because there was a little, even though they didn't have anything, there was a lot of times they could give a little doll or something, you know, that they could apart from, because, like I said, it was $40 million worth of stuff went over there.
Oh.
So there again, he went people to people. And back up just a minute here. Well, he went people to people, and first thing you know, he had enough for 49 cars, a car for every state. He was going to fill one for the United States, but they ended up with a car for every state in the Union.
Because of the generosity of the people,
you know. So anyway, reason was the boxcars were sitting there. After the war, they revised their railroad system because it didn't match with the other countries. Every time they got to the border, they had to take everything out and put it in the boxcar and then go. So they revised. So here all those boxcars were sitting. So he said, well, that's what I'm going to use is a boxcar, you know. And it just fitted in with the 49ers, you know. So it was really a good thing, you know, that the United States did.
Okay, so each state got a boxcar. How did this boxcar wind up in Hayes?
Well, a lot of people want to know that, you know. But like I always said, a simple way to phrase that is, in any organization, you start at the basic, you know, and you work your way up, and first thing you know, you're at the state level. And we had a couple of fellows from Hayes, that Barney Lamer and Ross Beach Jr. Were at the state level, more or less in Topeka with the 40 and 8, so they had the right to pick where they was going to go, you know. And there was a lot of, even though we had dust storms, they hadn't, but they sure raised the dust storm afterwards when it came out to Hayes, you know. What in the world do you want that out at Hayes for, you know? Well, that's the basic reason, you know. Because,
both these guys, Lamer and Beach, saw the future, didn't they?
Yeah, really. And it was something they had a handle on, you know, and they wanted to do something with it.
The Legion was the designated location for this boxcar for the state of Kansas then?
First, it went to Fort Hayes.
Fort Hayes State.
Fort Hayes State grounds.
Okay.
It sat down by the museum, and it sat down there from 49 to 75. And we found out that the college wanted to take the boxcar out to the experiment station used for storage or junket, you know. And a bunch of us young Legionnaires, we didn't know what it was, but Wayne Gershner, he was adjutant for the Legion at the time, but he was also working at the college, bookwork of some kind, and he got wind of it, so he'd bring it back, you know. And we decided we needed to do something about that. So even though we didn't know what we're doing, but anyway, it took us quite a while to get the approval from the president. And after we finally got approval of him, we had another scenario we had to work around, because once it goes on school property, more or less, it comes under the Board of Regents.
Right.
So then we had to deal with the Board of Regents to have access to the boxcar. And it took 3 or 4 months before we finally got approval. And they told us we'll give it to you, but you have to break it all down and refurbish it the way it initially was, you know, and all this good stuff.
They want it restored historically.
Yeah.
And there's a story in that, too.
And to make sure that we maintain it, or else they'll take it away and give it to somebody else, you know. So that kind of encouraged us a little bit to stay on the ball, you know. And so we moved it out here in around January or February of '75, and then it took us about 10 years to accumulate enough money, and then finally Dale Shade, we got him as a contractor to tear it all down and redo it the way it was, the way it should be. And the craziness of it was they wanted according to specs, and we didn't know what specs was, you know, what they really meant. Well, we knew what they meant, but we didn't have
where were the blueprints?
And finally we got hold of some blueprints, but they were all in French. So then we had to have the college professors or somebody down there decipher them for us. And then Dale Shade went to Denver and had it all milled down to the specs.
Dale was owner of Shade Construction.
Shade Construction, right. And
well, Chuck Yunker had a part in, he was involved in the Legion then, and he had a part in those blueprints, didn't he?
Well, that's true. He was the adjutant of the Legion, and he has access to different people, you know, and he finally got a hold of somebody that knew somebody that knew somebody, and they sent us the blueprints of the boxcar, more or less. They're all basically the same, and that really helped a lot there to get it going, you know.
So Dale refurbishes it, puts it back to the way it was, basically, through his company of Shade Construction Company. Then it's available here in the Legion. Then what happens? When was it decided that this should be a thing for people to see? I mean, the Legionnaires knew about it, but what about people who are visiting Hayes, for example?
Well, it was setting out here, you know, and we really hadn't done anything inside. We just sat here for about 10 years. And then finally, after Shade Construction had it all completed and painted and everything, then Ralph Wohlers and myself and several other people, we started working, wanted to do something on the inside because it sat down the college and nobody could get in or nothing. Nobody knew what it was. So Ralph, he was really the instigator because he was with the National Guard and he retired from the National Guard. And he was World War II, Korean, Vietnam, and all the other stuff. He was involved in all kinds of service people, so he knew how to organize stuff. So he started making a museum out of it. And he done the paperwork and I took pictures.
Lots of pictures, lots of pictures.
Lots of pictures. And pictures worth 1,000 words, you know, a lot of times they say. But it has really turned out nice, you know, because probably about 10, 15 years ago, time goes by so fast. At that time, Kansas was one of the 3 best maintained boxcars in the nation.
Wow.
So that really made us stand up, you know. So research, you know. Anyway, I had a tour out here one time and had some people standing here and I was telling that we were one of the 3 best boxcars in the nation. And a little old lady in the back said, "Mr. Holzmeister, which one of the 3 are you?" So I goes, "Duh, research." So those are the things when you have a tour, you have all kinds of stuff come up, questions, and I enjoy questions, you know. People want to know what this is all about. And on the side here, you see these crests. Now over in France, it was like providences. If you give something from that county or providence, you got your crest on the boxcar.
Oh.
Each one had a crest,
Okay.
But not every boxcar has all the crests because there are just too many, to put on one boxcar. So that's where those crests come from. And they were on the outside down at the college, but they were starting to disappear, so they took them all off and put them in the library, in the museum. That's why a lot of them have such good color.
Wow, yeah.
We had gals from Montana, Arizona, Kansas, Montana, and Arizona. They're working on their boxcar, and they wanted to know the real color of the crests, because if they're outside, they fade.
Yeah.
And those are some of the engine pictures that they had pictures made of to get the real actual color of the crest when they came over. So it's a long story. You could talk for hours on it,
Well, now to the tours. First of all, you get some help from the Hayes Convention and Visitors Bureau to kind of promote the tourism.
Right.
You're
They're a good asset.
Yeah, you're the main tour director now. How many tours do you do?
Sometimes it's 3 or 4 a month. Sometimes it's every other month. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 months where we don't have any. It just depends.
People come from all over the country or all over the world?
We've gotten some from France that come through here, and a lot of them they tour strictly for boxcars.
Oh.
They go from state to state and see where the boxcars are, and they have a rundown of all the boxcars,
Much like some of the tourism at historic Fort Hayes that does the replication of soldiers, for example.
Right.
Okay.
And it's real interesting when you listen to some of the people. We had a couple from France, a couple of young couples from France. They come over, and they wanted to tour the United States, and they happened to come through Hayes. They wanted to see Gunsmoke, Hayes, Gunsmoke, and we all said, what? And they saw that Convention of Visitors Bureau, something about the boxcar or the Kansas magazine, and they came out and they had a nice letter in there for them, for us, that they appreciate we still have these boxcars, as a momentum of France.
And another thing that's coming soon, and Jeff will get us a picture of this later on, is the sign that's going to be made for the outside. That process is underway now, isn't it?
Right. It should have been done a long time ago, but we've been putting it off, and finally I said, I'm getting up in the age we need to do something. So down where I got the idea was you go down the interstate, at the rest area you see Kathleen Sebelius sign for the Purple Heart.
Right.
So I took pictures of that darn thing 2 or 3 times and never done it. This year I said I'm going to do something. So finally I called all over creation trying to find out where Kathleen Sebelius and all this good stuff, where that sign was made. And lo and behold, where it was down at the Lansing Penitentiary. And I told that girl, I said, what I want, but I said, I don't want to get in trouble because I don't want to go down with you guys, But anyway, they made up the sign for us, stating everything about the boxcar, not everything, but basic things of the boxcar, where it came from, how it got here, and all this good stuff. And it's going to be a 4x5 sign that will be erected out here in the next couple of months.
Who's doing the work?
High Plains welding shop out here.
Okay.
They do a fantastic job for us. They done other work for us,
and then State Glass is going to put a
state
clear cover on it to protect it,
like
right, from the
like a
elements.
storm window over the top, so air can get through and keep it from people vandalizing it or scratching or something. Like
and this will be posted outside, so if you're not available, or if somebody just stops by and happens to see the boxcar here at the Legion building, they can look and the sign will give them some basic information.
Give basic information and say there's a museum and this and that, you know, and my telephone number's on there, and if they want to call me, I'll gladly give a tour, you know. It takes me about 15 minutes to get ready to come out. And
how long does the tour last? Depending on the questions?
Depending on the individual. If they want to talk, well, we'll visit, you know, and it go on and on and on and on and on. One little thing that I had heard somewheres was at World War I, France didn't have no iron ore.
Oh, okay.
So the Americans made a bunch of boxcars, and they shipped them back over to France, and then they put the wood and stuff on, you know, and kind of a tied-in situation, you know, kind of friendly thing, you know.
So a lot of this might be iron ore from the United States then.
Yeah.
We got about 3 minutes left in this segment, Eddie. I wanted you to talk about the artifacts because that is a central part of the 40 and 8 Merci boxcar.
Well, one thing we have, World War I veterans' uniforms and helmets and hats, and then we have World War II, Korean, Vietnam, Desert Storm, and all these whoever, and they're all donated to the organization here.
Everything from mess kits to canteens to ammunition pouches.
And just like here, I had a helmet here with the hole in it. Somebody probably got killed. But anyway, it disappeared here, and I had a tour, and I told this guy, and he said, well, heck, I got one laying at home I don't know what to do with. So he just mailed it to us. So it's from Casper, Wyoming. And that's how we get all this stuff, you know. And
well, and tell me the story of the book too, because that's an interesting story that somebody locally found and donated.
Well, I had a tour out here for the Legion, had a function, and I had the boxcar open, and this gentleman walks in and he looks around and he said, I got just a book for you here. And he said, give me 15 minutes, I'll run home and get it. Well, he couldn't find it then. He said, I think the kid's done something with it. So about 30 days he came back and he had the book, and I looked through it, and all of a sudden here I saw some about 40 and 8 boxcars, and they was putting a mule in there and the guys sticking out the window. I said, that's the book I want here, you know. And that's how we get most of the stuff, you know. People donate, you know, to preserve something. Just like here's something from Ellis.
A campaign hat from PFC Ray Rowland from Elizabeth Klasny in Ellis, a World War I hat.
The thing was, when I was working down at the shoe shop, I was always listening to Party Line, and one day this gal comes on board, and she said, we're dividing Grandpa's stuff. He was in World War I, a medic, and we're distributing it, whatever, you know. But she said, we just hate to have this go by the wind, you know. So she said, we'd like to have somebody that would keep it and display it or to use it, you know, in the proper way. So I called Ralph Walters real quick like, and I said, you got to call this number right now. I said, not tomorrow, not 2 hours from now, right now. So he calls her, and she was just tickled to death that we got it here, displayed, you know.
Something else, Eddie, that I wanted you to point out were the pictures from the actual parade downtown Hayes on the arrival of the Merci boxcar to Hayes.
Yeah, the boxcar come in to the United States, and it come to Kansas, and it toured 120 towns in 120 towns in 140 days, and it ended up at Fort Hayes, or Hayes, Armistice Day in 1949.
Wow.
And they had one big hell of a parade, I should say, and that was when all the stores would close and everybody participated in whatever was going on, you know. And I was a senior in high school in Queener, but I didn't communicate with that at that time. But that was a big day here, and then after the parade, it was moved down to the Fort Hays State University, and that's where it sat till '75. And we cherish it here. It's something different that every 49er in Kansas would like to have. And but those are just the things that, and I have nothing else to do except I'm retired, and I enjoy this thing here, and we need to preserve it for our veterans and our families, the wives and children, you know. A lot of times I say, you know, that guy could have been shot over there and gone, but the wife and the kids are at home. They have to live through it. And that's the one you should remember too, you know.
Yeah.
So I work with it, you know, and go to promenade. We call our meetings promenades, and have a good time there too, you know. And
that's the kind of dedication that you'll find with Ed Holzmeister, Korean War veteran and Grand Director of the Kansas Merci Boxcar, now stationed at the Hays American Legion at 13th and Canterbury, and our community connection. More in a moment.
The Veterans Tribute on Eagle Community Television, brought to you by American Legion, Masters Cleaners, Emprise Bank, Vanderbilt's, Steel Fabrications, Ellis County Historical Society, Cross Manufacturing, Cedarview Assisted Living, Heartland Building, Poulos Lock and Key, Downing Nelson Oil, James Motor Company, and Eagle Communications.
Welcome back to our community connection with Ed Holzmeister, Korea War veteran and Grand Director of the Kansas Merci Boxcar. We're actually in the boxcar itself, the 40-8 boxcar, which came to Hays and is a part of the history of World War I and World War II. But there's also a history with the Korean War, which actually, to an extent, was called a conflict rather than an actual war. It began June 25, 1950. Some 75,000 soldiers from the North Korean People's Army poured across the 38th parallel, which was the boundary between the Soviet-backed Democratic People's Republic of Korea to the north and the pro-Western Republic of Korea to the south. The invasion was the first military action of the Cold War, and by July, American troops had entered the war on South Korea's behalf. Our thanks to the folks at the History Channel for some background information, which we'll share with you during our segment with Ed Holzmeister. So the Korean War was your war.
We were living in Queener at the time, but we always had to go out to the farm and work on the farm. We were in high school at that time, and more or less at seniors. But anyway, finally after high school, me and my two brothers went to Wichita to work construction, building homes down there. That was at Korean War time, and everybody was looking for homes and stuff down there. It was just mass confusion down there with building houses. So I stayed with my cousin, and eventually it was my sister-in-law's wife, cousin's wife, that we boarded in a room there, you know. And we worked construction down there, and then we'd come home during the summertime and work out on the farm. And finally in August of '51, Darlene and I, we married. And about that same time, I got my invitation from Uncle Sam,
These were the days of the draft.
Yeah, days of the draft, and that just blew my mind, you know. But we coped with it, and finally we married anyway. We were on our way anyway.
You knew you were on the draft list.
Yeah, we were announced one time in church, and at that time, if you have been active in getting married and stuff like, they would defer you for 6 months. So then I knew January 1 was the deadline. So me and my brother Abe from Salina now, we were together all the time. We went through grade school and high school, and then through the Korean War. And I had 3 brothers in World War II, and they said try something different. So we tried to get in the Navy, and we didn't know how to swim or a damn thing, you know. But we joined the Navy, and we went to California, and a big surprise was when we got to the ocean. We just like to crawl underneath our chairs, you know, just petrified.
Here's a Kansas boy seeing that Pacific Ocean out there.
And no water around, you know, didn't know how to swim or nothing. But anyway, we got through that. We had to learn to swim in boot camp. Then we come back, then we went back out to California, and then we went to on a little ship that we refurbished and gave it back to, or we leased it to Korea. And then they put us on battleship Iowa, and my God, everybody said, boy, that's a regulation stuff. And I said, when's it going back to the States? And they said in 6 months. I said, that's the one I want.
Yeah.
But anyway, we got on the battleship Iowa, and that was one big ship. And when we come back, we had 5,080 people on there.
Wow.
We had doctors, nurses, lawyers.
It was like a town.
It was a town. 5,000 people. That's a town. But
where did the Iowa wind up then, as part of the Korean conflict?
it's down around San Diego now.
All right, but where did it go for Korea? Was it stationed off one of the islands there?
No, we would go back to Japan and refurbish, and then we'd go back to, and we'd lay out 3 miles out of Korea, and we just bombarded them, you know.
Artillery and such.
The thing of it was, we tried to get in the Navy, and we couldn't get into Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas at that time, and we were in Wichita, so we aggravated that recruiter down there. And finally he said, you might try Ponca City, Oklahoma. And we finally got into Ponca City, Oklahoma, into the Navy. And then we finally got on the battleship Iowa, and we ended up in Norfolk, and Darlene was down there for a year with me. And at that time, the USS Iowa and the Missouri would change off every year. One would take you over there for a year, the next year there. But then Eisenhower made peace over there, so we didn't have to go back over there. So then they used the Iowa as a training ship for the midshipmen that would get out of school. And we'd take, I don't know how many midshipmen came aboard, but every division had so many midshipmen, because that was where they're going to go back on their little ship or smaller ship, and they'd be the officer for them, you know. So it was a kind of recruiting, not a recruiting, but a learning stage for these officers.
Floating classroom.
Floating classroom.
Yeah.
And this is what, now a good thing you said that this is what they're planning on doing with the Iowa out there, have classes on there, history classes.
Well, now, when you were on the Iowa, 3 miles off the coast of Korea then, and there was artillery shelling going on, were there any threats of aircraft coming to try to destroy the ship?
Every once in a while, there'd be MiGs coming over.
Yeah.
So everybody went to their battle station. But they never did. We had aircraft carriers around us.
Oh, okay. Some protection there.
Yeah. It was a crazy situation. They did not have a Navy, so we just laid out here 3 miles out, and we just bombed the railroad system and over the hills and shoot them, you know. And they were just like ants. The next morning, the railroad track was there again, you know.
Yep.
And so basically, it was our turn to come back, and Missouri went over, so that we were out of it.
Well, it's interesting, Ed, in the information we gleaned from the History Channel, there were some 10,000 North and South Korean soldiers that were killed in battle even before the actual war began, because there were the skirmishes across this 38th parallel, and this was going on even before the United States got involved. But then when the United States got involved, I don't think we, back here at home, realized the magnitude of the commitment. It was a 3-year war that actually took a huge total of lives. Part of the reason, according to the information gleaned from this report from the History Channel, was that many people feared it was the first step in a communist campaign to take over the world. So this was the premise for the United States involvement. Harry Truman, president at the time, said, if we let Korea down, the Soviets will keep right on going and swallow up one piece after another.
That was the problem with Japan. After World War II, Russia wanted to come in and take Japan over. Well, Truman dropped the bombs, and that stopped them, you know, from coming in. But I was going to say something too about the Iowa. The old saying is, join the Navy, see the world. Abe and I, we were blessed with that, because we saw 18 different countries at the within 3.5 years there, which was really an experience. And a lot of people talk about our living over here. I said, just go to some other country once, and then you'll come back with a different thought, you know. And it's
quite an experience from a kid from Quinter.
It was an experience. We had it on the ship. We're in the ship service like the PX in the Army.
Okay. Is that what your job was?
Yeah.
Okay.
We were, Abe was in the storeroom, and he handed out, he was selling enlisted men's clothes and stuff like that. I was up in the officer's store. I was in the enlisted men's store. I was in the soda fountain. They had, those are the 3 stores that I worked in. And for 5,000 people, there was, in that enlisted men's store, it was $150,000 worth of merchandise. So you know there was a lot of stuff there. And it was just like a job at home.
Yeah.
We didn't have to stand no watches, no nothing. But we were in the store when everybody else was off. So we had to be in the store and help them.
Well, it was kind of like a town where you'd have a general store or something like that where you sold merchandise. Same thing on the ship to Iowa.
Right. We had a jewelry store. The officers had all their medals and stuff, you know. And we were overseas in Europe. Every port we went into, we had people come aboard and sell stuff. And then by the time we got to the next port, the other stuff arrived from the other place, you know. And it was interesting. Like I said, it was just the fact that you were away from home.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it was just like working in a store at home, you know. And
were you able to keep in touch? Was there pretty good communication for you to be able to keep in touch with Darlene and Abe and the other members of the family? Of course, Abe was there.
Airmail letters, you know. That was basically our way of communication, letters.
How long did you have to serve? Were you in there for
4 years? 4 years.
4 years.
4 years.
Okay, so you actually extended your service beyond what the Korean War was actually extended.
Right,
because
right.
it was about a 3-year war, I think.
But Abe, we got out, and then he couldn't cope with back home work, you know. So he wanted to re-enlist, and I said, well, I'll see you. I'm older. I'll see you out. Then you can do what you want to. But then he got out, and he was out 6 months, and he went back in, and Mom was just petrified about it, you know. And I said, Mom, he could get killed tomorrow, right out here on the road. So I said, he's at home now.
Yeah. Finally, after more than 2 years of negotiations, the adversaries signed an armistice, July 27, 1953. The agreement allowed the POWs to stay where they liked, drew a new boundary near the 38th parallel, gave South Korea an extra 1,500 square miles of territory, and then created that 2-mile demilitarized zone, which still exists today. But again, I don't think we recognized the magnitude, and according to the information from the History Channel again, nearly 5 million people died in that conflict, and more than half of them were civilians. Almost 40,000 Americans died. It was more than action in World War II or in Vietnam. More than 40,000, 100,000 Americans were wounded just in that 3-year time.
That winters were terrible over there. Winters were terrible over there for the soldiers. And they get run over, you know, from the other side, and it was a terrible situation. I was glad I was in the Navy. But be it as it may, it was a tough situation. But I think it needed to be done because just like Russia now is interfering with national stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And same way there.
Yeah, the Soviets are still posing a threat.
Still posing a threat.
This time to the Ukraine.
Yeah. So it's a vicious circle. It just goes on and on and on, you know. And
okay, you came
have to
back
be
home.
Vigilant.
Yeah, you came back home. When did the shoe store start? Was it the shoe store first or the liquor store?
A shoe store. Well, I worked for Safeway for 8.5 years. First, when I got out, that was still kind of my business, you know.
Yeah.
And then after that, I bought. Dad-in-law helped me buy the shoe repair store, and I was in it for 35 years. But we finally moved from 8th Street to 9th Street, and we got our coffee, tea, and spice, and changed completely from over here. I always say we were in the 60s, and then from over there we went into the 80s, and we had coffee, tea, and spices, and tobaccos, and cigars, and I bought my own pipe tobacco by the bulk, and mixed it and sold it all over the United States. And
well, how'd you learn the shoe repair business? By trial and error?
Trial and error. I just needed to get out of Safeway because I was as far up as I could go, and I needed to do something. We had children come along, you know, and I always told people, I said, when they come in, I said, now, you know, I'm just starting out here, you know, and if something happens, I'll make it good with you. You know.
Which you did.
And they said, Joe, just go ahead, and we're glad to have you, you know.
Yeah, really.
And
the only one in town.
Yeah. Well, not really. Getz was down on Main
Well, that's right. There was Getz Shoe Store,
Getz, and then we moved from 8th Street to 9th Street, and we went a different direction, and we had shoe repair and all that other good stuff. And we went to market twice a year and bought stuff that we were wondering if we could sell it or not. And but it was enjoyable. But I got in '94. got caught up with the glues, and it took care of my liver.
Yep.
And so I just had to get out, and that was the worst thing I ever had to do.
Was to give up the shoe business after 35
5 years.
Yeah.
And so finally we got somebody from Topeka come up, and he was a good man too. And he said there was just too much competition down there. He said, come and bought us out. So he was in it after that, which I was glad that we found somebody, because college and everything, we needed some shoe repair people around, you know.
Yeah.
And,
Sure.
and now we don't have nobody.
Yeah. It's a lost art.
Yeah.
Believe me.
But every once in a while I'll go through all the cowboy stores, you know, and there's a boot there that I could work on, you know. It's just how it changes.
Yeah.
And so.
Structure, design, materials, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's been an interesting life.
Glad to see you're still doing the tours of the 48.
Yeah, this is my thing now, you know, is I enjoy people coming out and wanting to know about it, and that's all what it is, you know. It's keep the memory alive.
Sure.
The veterans and what they did.
And give a history lesson to the young people who don't have an association with this.
Right. And like I said, it's like Eisenhower said one time when the Holocaust was, he said, take pictures and movie pictures and this and that, because down the road somebody's going to say that never even happened.
Yeah.
And it is happening.
Yeah.
You know, so.
And did happen.
And this way they can come in and see what happened so many years ago, you know, here, you know. And
So if you want to know about the Kansas Merci boxcar, you got to come to the location. The Hayes American Legion, 13th and Canterbury, Hayes Convention and Visitors Bureau, or check in with Ed Holzmeister, the Grand Director of the Kansas Merci boxcar and our Community Connection. Thanks for watching.
very good.
The Veterans Tribute on Eagle Community Television, brought to you by American Legion, Masters Cleaners, Emprise Bank, Vanderbilt's, Steel Fabrications, Ellis County Historical Society, Cross Manufacturing, Cedarview Assisted Living, Heartland Building, Poulos Lock and Key, Downing Nelson Oil, James Motor Company, and Eagle Communications.